Once you've gotten to your duotone hard edge color, like here, what we last did was we made a combination layer, like a mixed cheese bag, where it's all in one place. And I'm going to keep the gray background on to judge it. Why this is so helpful before the next steps is because now we have the color all in one place, and we can do adjustments to it. So remember adjustments, direct adjustments, levels, color balance, hue saturation. We did it before on other people's pixels. Here we get to do it to our own pixels. So we're going to start with levels. And we can decide, oh, do I want to make it even more moody, and darken them overall? Do I want to brighten it up a little bit, kind of wash them out? Just don't push it to white, right? Or you lose a lot of your work. And remember, it's safe because whatever you do here is just a combined version of these three options. So I might brighten it just a tiny bit, maybe not that much. That's for levels. Then image adjustments, color balance. Now this can be really helpful. So I can mix in my midtones a little bit of red into everything, a little bit of blue into everything. It kind of makes those jewel tone blues a little bit deeper, and a little bit of magenta. Highlights. Same thing, maybe warm up my highlights just a little bit, add a little bit of red into it all. And then shadows. You can see how you're now just deepening them a little bit. Now, let me turn on the combined ones behind. Now this combined layer is just a little bit different, right? And now that I look at it, it looks too pink. It looks too, like my purples got really purple and got away from gray. So now I can go to hue saturation, and I can play with the actual hue as well. Push it side to side, see which ones are helpful, and the intensity of the color. Maybe I want to desaturate everything a little bit, which I think is actually a little helpful. And I can go to the magentas in particular, isolate those. We haven't done this before in hue saturation, and just work on that. So I can get those grays back to a gray rather than being so purple, right? Then I can go to the reds. And I can play with that hue and kind of warm them up. And maybe darken them or lighten them. Looks like darken a little bit to get what I want. And you see the difference between that and this. And all it's doing is playing with settings. Now I like both of them, but I also can blend them together with opacity, right? And find kind of a nice mix between the two. And if I was going to finish this off as just being a duotone hard edge illustration, I was going to actually give it to the client, like give it to the campus to use for their Northeast Lakeview College Renaissance Fair, I would do one last finishing step. Because though this duotone looks really interesting, you see how flat those pixels are? Because it's just one pixel filling up a whole lot of space. So what I do is I take this top layer and I actually set it to dissolve mode. And when I do that, you'll see that it will actually break up the pixels with those slight variations. And that makes it print in a much more pleasing way. So this was the combined layer, but it only works if you mess with the colors a little bit, with your adjustments. If you darken it, if you lighten it, if you change the colors. So dissolve is a blending mode. So dissolve at 100%, it's right underneath normal. It's to give that little bit of broken up texture. At 100%, dissolve doesn't look like anything, but when you take the opacity down on dissolve, you'll see how it starts to break up the textures. And it's really, really subtle, but it helps it to print really nicely. All right, now we're going to get to the other effects. So I'm going to set it to 77, my birth year. Okay, and now I'm going to mark that with purple, or violet, I guess. So that's my first kind of finish. This is how I might give it to the client as an option for digital coloring, because it would print easily, it would reproduce well, which is important for illustration. It's not super fussy, but it's got those lights and darks, and it's even got a little bit of texture breakup in the pixels themselves with that clean vector line art. The next step is I'm going to play with, instead of hard edge, how about soft edge? So to do this, I'm going to take that combined layer, I'm going to lock it, but I'm also going to duplicate it. And now this combined layer is unlocked. I'm going to set it to normal mode and 100%. So it's now just combined duotone hard edge again, but slightly different colors because I optimized them. How do I change this to soft edge? So you see on the lemon, this lemon looks a little bit like a rock because that hard edge shadow doesn't really give you the sense of the texture of the lemon. Soft edge, it gives you more of those steps and it gradates between them. So how do I do that? I'm going to use the only filter I need you to know for this class. The only filter you'll be tested on the final exam. And that is under filters for Photoshop, it is blur, Gaussian blur. We've used it before, but here we're using it really intentionally. What does Gaussian blur do? Well, you can see what it's doing. That's at 0. Gaussian blur takes the edge contrast away. It softens the edges. If I do it too much, it just all washes out, right? You do it on your combined layer because that's the one with the highlights and the shadows. But if I do it just enough, then I can see that soft texture come through. So let's look at the difference. Hard-edged, soft-edged. Both duotone. Hard edge, soft edge. It works well for some things, not as well for other things. So for one thing, the fabrics look really good in soft edge. But the harder edge shapes like the helmet, the eye, the beak, the sword, the talons, I don't think look as good with soft edge. So what can you do? Well, I'm going to label this as soft edge duotone. Okay? And then I'm going to lock it. But before I lock it, one problem you can have with soft edge is sometimes your colors can bleed outside of their lines. Because if I turn off my lines, look at what soft edge does to those pixels. See how it projects them outward? And so just to make sure, it's actually really pretty. It's like a stained glass window. But to make sure that they're not going outside of my lines, before I finish my soft edge layer, I'm going to use a magic wand with contiguous. I'm going to click on the outside, not of my vector layer, but of my combined duotone layer, because that's where I have everything filled in, right? And now I'm going to go to my soft edge and I'm going to hit delete. So it doesn't look like it did much, but what it did is it cleaned up the edges around my soft edge so that the edges are sharp where they overlap with the vector line art. So now the soft edge is not bleeding anywhere it shouldn't, right? And I get to decide, do I like it soft or do I like it hard? But I can also do a mix, what's called mixed duotone. So if I do Command J, I'm going to label this layer mixed duotone. These are all optional. And now I'm going to use my eraser. It's been a while since we've done this in Photoshop or Photopea. And I'm going to use my eraser pretty big, pretty soft, like you see. I'm going to use it at an opacity of 15. And for the first time, I might actually use an eraser that is soft, round pressure opacity. That means the harder I press with my tablet, the more opaque it will be. So if I want to barely take away any, like on the feathers, I just touch lightly. Right? And those will slightly start to sharpen. Or they should. Oh, I have to turn off this. Sorry. You have to turn off the soft edge duotone at 100% underneath. Otherwise, you won't see what you're doing here. So let me go back before I was erasing so you could see its effect. It didn't seem to do much. But it was, I just couldn't see it. Okay. So turn off your soft edge. Now on this duplicate of your soft edge, which I'm calling mixed duotone, I'm going to, with the eraser tool at a low opacity, start to softly erase away from that soft edge. And now I can control how hard edge different parts are. So on these blue feathers, I want them to be a little bit crisper. On the sword, I want it to be sharper. On the talons, I want it to be sharper. On the gauntlets, on the scabbard.
What's the hardness set at?
Pretty soft, 0, because that's just the edge of your brush. And you're deciding where you want soft edge duotone, like I want it on the parcels here. I want it on the fabric here. And where you want it to be sharper, like in the eye, on the helmet. So this is mixed duotone, where I'm using hard and soft edged, because some things are more reflective and some things are softer.
Where do you have your opacity set?
I have it set to 76, but I'm also using a brush that is not set for pressure and size, it's set for pressure and opacity.
How do you change the setting on this?
So for the brush, or the eraser or any tool, here where you have the hardness and the size, underneath it you have the brush defaults. So we've always used pressure for size. That means the harder you press with a stylus, the bigger the brush will be, like when we use the blob brush. But you can also use it for pressure for opacity, which means the harder you press, the more opaque it is. Okay, I can come and troubleshoot it for you. So I am erasing away now from my soft duotone in order to get it to be a little bit sharper in some places, like this little patch here. That's a little bit more painterly, like the shadows here. If I'm using light logic, anything that is really close to the thing that's casting its shadow, like under here, then those are going to be sharper, even if they're fabric. But in general, I think this works pretty well. So this is the mixed duotone. Now remember, like a sandwich, this isn't just a one-topping sandwich. This is having the duotone behind it as well. And it matters like what you stack up where. And if I put the soft edge duotone on, then everything will be soft.